to break down all the receivers in the 2019 NFL Draft, and there are a lot. We're going to triage them. And we'll do them by round, starting with round 2 where the Saints have the number 62 overall pick. By triaging them, I mean we're going to have 3 categories. One will be those we know we don't want to go after. Then some we're on the fence about, and ones we know we'll take if the opportunity is there. The 2 main things we're going to try to do is not duplicate what we already have. We don't need another Michael Thomas, Simi Cobbs, Traquan Smith, etc. We're looking for either a receiver who will own a slot or be our WR2 of the future, or both. And we're also looking for receivers with high catch rates. Nothing in the 50 percentile. At least 60 and up. We want to try to identify field vision, competitiveness and willingness to block. Those things we're specifically looking for will trim down the list a lot. We're not going to go over every receiver in the draft. Just those that will have a good chance of being around where our picks are. Starting in the 2nd round, DK Metcalf, Marquise Brown, A.J. Brown, N'Keal Harry, Kelvin Harmon and Deebo Samuel will be off the board. We'll go ahead and look at Deebo on the off chance he falls. After him, there's J. Arcega-Whiteside, Paris Campbell, Hakeem Butler, Riley Ridley, Emmanuel Hall and Andy Isabella. I'm not a fan of Arcega-Whiteside. He's a poor man's Michael Thomas who runs go routes. But he seems to be shying away from running a 40, which concerns me. I'd guess him at a 4.6. Just not a fan. Paris Campbell is my favorite receiver in the draft, but the buzz on him has grown since his combine. I doubt he will be there at 62. Hakeem Butler has a horrible catch rate and it got worse through college. He's too much like Simi Cobbs anyway. Riley Ridley is the name. He's not fast, only has a 30-inch vertical and the numbers aren't there from Georgia. Emmanuel Hall, he's got some awesome measurables but the drop rate. He's a career 58% catcher. I don't like that enough. We'll definitely check out Andy Isabella and we'll dip down to pick 91 to check out Ohio State's Terry McLaurin. So we have Deebo Samuel, Paris Campbell, Andy Isabella, and Terry McLaurin. On our big board currently, Samuel is at 52, Campbell is 57, Isabella is 81 and McLaurin is 91. We'll have to see how much things move around ahead of draft day, but I would pass on a player who's at 91 and I'm at 62. Just go for a tight end or edge. Next, Deebo Samuel, South Carolina page 2 COLUMBIA, SC, September 16th, wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Photo by Todd Bennett, Getty Images. I'll be honest, I'm doing this one for the Whodats. I know there are a lot of fans out there who want Deebo Samuel, I'm just not as enamored. He's slippery, I'll give him that, and he's got some physicals, but to me, he looks like what Tommy Lee Lewis probably looked like in college. He has short arms but very big, 10-inch hands that make an awesome catching tool. You can imagine all the little gadget plays spinning around in Sean Payton's head watching film. Deebo is competitive, fiery, and those are excellent qualities. There's just something really unfinished for me about Deebo. I see him getting worked into this system and being semi-productive as a pro. But not to the degree I think some Saints fans are envisioning. I see his peak being something like 2011 Lance Moore in New Orleans. Maybe 600 yards receiving with 5 or 6 touchdowns. That would be an upgrade over what the Saints had last year. But I think an upgrade shouldn't be the goal with your first pick in any draft. Well, upgrade certainly, but you want a difference maker, not a supplement. I see players like Tommy Lee, Taysom, potentially Deebo as distractions for a coach like Sean Payton. Especially with all the talk about the young, offensive-minded whiz-kid coaches coming into the system, and Payton may be wanting to show he can do that too. He'll be more focused on what the next gadget play is going to be, and that was my knock about Taysom Hill last year. I don't see any time where Drew Brees isn't on the field calling offensive shots is a good thing. I need to note that a lot of my information is coming from the Pro Football Focus 2019 Draft Guide, which comes with a paid subscription to Pro Football Focus. Totally worth every cent, and especially this time of year. One of the best things about the guide is seeing where a player sits nationally in rankings on certain stats. For example, a stat like deep pass catch rate. In that particular stat, Debo brought in 26.7% of the balls sent his way. That was only good enough for 126th ranking nationally. The point being, most of the higher-ranked receivers have at least one stat in the top 20, if not top 10. The best ranking Debo has is in yards per route run at 2.46, which is 33rd in the nation. A more well-rounded receiver needs to be selected this high if a receiver is the position taken. Perhaps Debo ends up having a very successful NFL career, and I wouldn't hope for less for the young man. But I don't see him being the complete product we need with this pick at this time. Next, Paris Campbell, Ohio State, page 3 COLUMBUS. In November 24, Paris Campbell, Ohio State defeated Michigan 62-39. Photo by Jamie Sabow. Getty Images. Paris Campbell is a relatively new name on the draft scene at receiver. He didn't really show up big until his senior year at Ohio State. And even then, much of what we heard about him was hype talk from Ohio State. Everybody knew he was fast. We all saw the production increase in his senior year, going from 40 catches for 584 yards and 3 TDs as a junior to 90 catches for 1,063 yards and 12 TDs as a senior. It was hard to keep him a secret. But when he got to the combine, everything changed overnight. In fact, he's at number 57 on our big board, which is post-combine. But the buzz about Paris Campbell is so intense that I just read a piece in which it was mentioned that it wouldn't be surprising to see him go as the first receiver in the draft. That's probably pushing it, maybe if he grew a few inches. A receiver at 5'11" isn't going to see that happen for at least a few years in today's NFL. Campbell was actually the leading receiver for the Buckeyes in 2018. He excels, though, out of the slot. And here's what I was saying with Deebo Samuel. Paris Campbell ranks number 5 nationally in yards per route run 3.47 and 5th in slot yards at 939. He's number 3 nationally in slot receptions with 79. If you didn't know, the Saints need a slot receiver. The void from the loss of Willie Snead still hasn't been addressed. You get that with Paris Campbell. But most, well, maybe no, slot receivers run a 4.31. So with Campbell, that opens other parts of the route tree that make him a potentially fearsome weapon in the NFL. His catch percentage in 2018 was 82.0%, and his career percentage was 76.3. Deebo's career number was 66.4. Catching 10% more of the balls thrown your way is not a small matter. Let's say that worked like this for Paris Campbell. 100 balls get thrown his way and his yards per catch is 12.4. If he misses an extra 10% of his passes, that's 120 yards coming off the board. That's why the little things matter. They don't show the misses and drops in the highlight reels. And that's why a catch rate in the 50s isn't what we're looking for. Now it's 240 yards left on the field. There are a lot of other factors here, like who is throwing him the ball, is that QB throwing catchable balls, scheme issues, did the big games come against lesser opponents or was it against Michigan or Penn State? For Campbell, his biggest game in 2018 was a 6-catch, 192 yards and 2-touchdown performance against Michigan. His worst games were on the road. He's the complete package. If I were a fantasy football guy, I'd draft him as a rookie regardless of where he goes. Oh, add on kick returns while we're at it. For his career, 30 returns for 913 yards. No touchdowns, but that's at 30.4 yards per return average. It's very unlikely he gets to 62, especially since the hype hasn't decreased at all, but if he falls to the Saints, that's an easy pick. I wouldn't even freak out if they tried to move up for him. Next, Andy Isabella at UMass, page 4 ATHENS, GA. In November 17, Andy Isabella. Photo by Scott Cunningham, Getty Images. Word is that Bill Belichick is pretty hot for Andy Isabella, and I'm sure the Patriots have a way of making that happen if they want. So he may not be there at 62. But currently, he's at 81 on our big board. If Paris Campbell is gone, Andy Isabella wouldn't be a bad consolation prize. He's a prototypical slot guy and he's a go guy. Got some jet sweeps and whatnot? Sure. and Campbell were the fastest players at this year's Combine with similar big play ability, though Isabella is more about the long routes. Number 1 in the nation in yards per route run at 4.15 and number 2 in deep pass yards with 705. He had 14 catches of 20 yards, and that's good for an 11th place finish nationally in that stat. He went 102 catches for 1,698 yards and 13 TDs, a 16.6 yards per catch average last year. Of course, playing football at UMass isn't exactly playing LSU and Bama. And his biggest game of 2018 was a 303 yards and 2 TD performance against Liberty. But his second biggest game of 2018 was against Georgia, albeit in a losing effort. In that one, he brought in 15 catches for 219 yards and 2 TDs. He's matched up against better competition and it didn't slow him down. He also led all receivers at the Senior Bowl this year with 7 catches for 74 yards and a TD. But he had a little more trouble in that one, working in a more generic offense not designed to feature his skill set. He's also tough. You'll frequently see Isabella fight through tackles, and hand tackles aren't going to happen. The only concern is the drop rate, but that can be worked on. He was shaky during his first 3 years, but, as a senior, ended up with a catch percentage of 69.2. The fact that it grew from a 61.9 and 62.0 in his early years is a very good sign about his dedication to his craft and ability to be taught. Knowing that the Saints need a slot guy and watching them pass on some good ones in free agency. Payton himself admitted they had been merely priced out on Adam Humphries, but the desire to have him was there. So you know they'll be going to get one somewhere in the draft, and Isabella would be a great one. Next, Terry McLaurin, Ohio State, page 5 EAST, Lansing, Michigan. In November 10, Terry McLaurin. Photo by Gregory Seamus, Getty Images. If there's any doubt where wide receiver U is in the world of college football, there shouldn't be. It's like they're coming off a conveyor belt in Columbus. And, with wide receivers, this won't be the last one out of Ohio State we look at this year either. Terry McLaurin was much more the WR2 role in the Buckeyes' offense. Physically he and Paris Campbell are pretty similar. Campbell is marginally faster. But maybe Campbell has a better route tree at his disposal and has more wiggle available to him after the catch. Campbell also has the willingness to go across the middle. There wasn't much slot work out of McLaurin, only bringing in 6 catches for 81 yards there. Being all the way down at 91 on our big board, I don't see the Saints dipping down that far. I'm including McLaurin in case he drops. He's still someone you want to have on your radar. He would be in the Ted Ginn Jr. mold and perhaps an eventual replacement there. So not an immediate help. McLaurin is number 3 in the nation for deep pass catch rate with a pretty staggering 71.4% and a career 65.2% overall rate. Obviously, he's your deep guy. There's plenty of film of him doing more, but his bread and butter is going to be the deep route. He showed that his senior year with 35 catches for 701 yards and 11 TDs, a 20-yard per catch average. While WR2 is an eventual need for the Saints, it won't be in 2018 unless that player brings more to the table as well. There will be a few shots, but Drew Brees isn't going that deep on anybody. McLaurin didn't do any kick or punt returns either, so you're getting a pretty limited bag of tricks here. Next, we'll attack the Jalen Ferguson's fall, land him at 62. But, if they did want to bring someone in for Teddy to try to hit deep in 2020, this might be a pretty good spot to do it on a budget if McLaurin falls to the 5th round.